Nigerian News Direct is the very first paper we'll be looking at, and it leads with what has been the conversation perhaps in the last 3 to 4 days, and we had the blessing and of also being leading in that conversation, setting the agenda when we had Taiwo Yedele right here on the program to explain to Nigerians what exactly is going on with the tax laws. Well, it's been gazetted. You could go to the website of the Reform People and get a copy of it if you're interested in reading voluminous document. But what the papers are leading with Nigerian News Direct is that Nigerians stand to gain more from tax laws. Nigerians stand to gain more from new tax laws. So I know we've talked about this. So there are like 4 pieces of legislation: Nigerian tax law, Nigerian tax administration, Nigerian Revenue Service, and then the joint board and all of that. All of these are meant to provide a proper framework, because the argument was to the effect that what we're operating as our tax laws were from the colonial masters. Some have been overtaken by time. So the gentlemen who were put together, led by Taiwo Yedele, who is the chairman of the Fiscal Reform and Tax Reform Committee, had to come together to put this together. Well, Nigerians have been reacting. The first furore came from the VAT distribution, where it became very, very political. In fact, I understand when he was saying that he had to, the government had to provide some level of security for him to be able to do his work, because you know how angry certain people were about VAT distribution. Well, that seemed to have gotten a political resolution, because as soon as he gets from tax laws to tax administration, it panders around socio-political issues. From there, I think the big one that has to do with the 5% fuel tax, which Nigerians don't want to see, hear, or be mentioned. It came into effect, I think, in 2007 when FEMA was established. So how should FEMA be serviced? Perhaps the framers of the law then, given the fact that subsidy was being paid by the government, said, okay, citizens should contribute to road maintenance, and added that 5% tax. Now that there's a new tax law, every tax, whatever, is harmonized into a legislation called the tax laws. So they just lifted it and brought it into the law. But Nigerians are saying enough. Now subsidy has been removed. What exactly is that 5% still doing in the law? Take it out. And I think the Nigerians have been loud on this. The chairman of the committee has made an argument to the fact that removing subsidy and the monies from subsidy is not enough to be able to cover the cost of infrastructure. So this is an extra. However, I say it's not going to take effect from January the 1st. The Minister of Finance, who is going to proclaim that, has said it's not going to take effect from January 1st, that there will be due consultations before it will be taken. But I think the message from Nigerians is very clear, even if it's a universal practice, because it's not just Nigeria that collects a fuel tax. Nigerians don't want it. And I think if the people, Section 14 of the Constitution says sovereignty belongs to the people. If at least the majority of the people are saying we're already overburdened, your policy is killing us, where we don't know when we'll start gaining from the pain we're being put through, you said this is the best for us for now, please, right now, we don't want to hear, see, or have anything to do with any 5% tax on the field. Throw it into the trash can. And I think it's very clear. A listening government will make sure that now or tomorrow is not implemented. But you know what government does? They put it there so that the day the day will come when they will quickly run to it and say, it's already been provided for. Nigerians don't want it provided for, because it looks like the era of tax on PMS or subsidy on PMS is gone. You have the next daily.
It's interesting. There's so much pressure, I believe, would be on him.
And he keeps smiling.
And he keeps smiling. He keeps saying, don't worry, don't worry, it's okay, everything will be okay. It's not as bad as you think it is. It's just, you know, it's been there before now. But let's take a look at rather the Daily Independent. Well, it talks politics here. It says, no law to punish politicians over early campaigns. That's coming from INEC. Yakubu Jega seek urgent electoral reforms before 2027. They're also warning that without these reforms, the poll integrity could be compromised. INEC officially recognizes David Mark-led ADC leadership. I mean, we'll get to talk about that. I mean, but this early campaigns thing, it's been on for a while. It looks like in Nigeria, once you win elections, you have just barely 1 year to perhaps allow the people enjoy some sort of governance and the dividends of democracy. Immediately after that first year, you know, it's back to trying to secure your seat. It's back to trying to ensure that you get a second term to complete what you have started, because 4 years is never enough in this part of the world. So it's interesting that the campaigns have been ongoing, and then there's a back and forth as to is there really a law or not to punish politicians who have, you know, who have been involved in early campaigns. We've seen that from all the parties, from the APC to the PDP to the Labour Party, and perhaps now the new bride, the ADC, you know. So we've seen that across board. I hope that just as Yakubu is promising, and his predecessor, Tahiru Jega, to ensure that there's some sort of urgent electoral reforms before 2027, I hope that this I hope that this will get the nod from the National Assembly, from the executive hand as well, because we know how there could always sometimes be a pushback when these kind of reforms are going to take full force, because, you know, of course, they have to secure their own personal interests most times. So that's the main writer there on the Daily Independent. Just as Jeff has mentioned, the News Direct, there's also something around tax as well. Farmers warned 5% fuel tax may worsen food inflation. This doesn't sound like good news at all to the average Nigerian, because you can imagine what you're battling with going to the markets now to purchase goods. You can imagine what it is right now to, you know, gain access to a plate of food. Some people say that in Lagos, for instance, it was easy to get a comfortable plate of food with 500 naira, with 300 naira. You know, I remember those days. 20 naira beans, 50 naira beans, rice like this, but, you know, but more like this. But right now, it's no more. You can't, in fact, if you're saying 100 naira rice, you're almost saying like, just, I wonder what you would get. Right. So we don't want to see this at all. We don't want to experience these numbers in double digits already. It's not good news for us at all.
Well, just before we go to the next Daily, Daily Independent, clearly, INEC has a lot of limitations, And one of those limitations is prosecution, and ability to follow through, and even, you know, protect the laws that, you know, establishes INEC to be able to govern the political space, because they are like regulators of electoral issues. And so politicians have found a way around the fine lines of the law. So what politicians do, sometimes they outrightly break the law. We have seen it. I can mention many laws politicians have broken, from the presidency down to governor, down to everybody. Sometimes the lawlessness is appalling when it comes to Nigeria. In fact, if you look at the issue around the Senator Natasha Akpoti about argument about cherry-picking the law and what is convenient for each person. And I think these reforms has to be put in place. And then our judiciary needs to step up to make sure that they protect this democracy to the best of its ability. I know there's a lot of pressure on them, a lot of crisis of confidence on literally all our institutions, but that's what we have. We have to work with what we have and improve upon what we have as far as Nigeria is concerned. So the law is very clear as to when campaigns should start, but politicians don't listen, will not listen until let me even shock you. Do you know that? Let me read the law. Section 88 or so of the Electoral Act says that when it comes to election expenses, the maximum election expenses to be incurred by a candidate at a presidential election shall not exceed, check the amount, 5 billion naira. If you're a presidential candidate in Nigeria and you spend 5 billion, you will lose even governor. you can't even 5 billion. That is like, I don't know. Yeah. But they don't obey these laws. You can even go to, let me even see. Well, let me not waste your time. So the law, there's enough legislation. We don't have a problem with legislation. It's implementation and punishment for bad behavior. That is where we have a problem. So just from, don't campaign yet till the election period. They start with, okay, they say don't vote. They will not use the word vote for the candidate. They start with supports, so that they are not running foul of the law. They will do that for like a year and then metamorphose from support to votes. And then everywhere a year barely after a year after elections, everywhere is charged with the next election, and it doesn't help governance. So I empathize with INEC, but INEC must look for a way to call political parties to order, from ruling to opposition. Now we're literally 2 years away and we're already campaigning. It doesn't make sense. If we can't obey this law, then we should just throw the law away. So I don't understand.
I just wonder when that institution would finally become independent indeed, as it has in the name.
Well, anyway, to New Telegraph leads us as well. But it's literally the same thing. Why INEC can sanction campaign offenders? We will have to look for it. Let's go to The Guardian before we bring in our guest. The Guardian newspaper is leading with FG boasts of 80% 2024 budget execution, cites procurement hurdles for 2025. So this, when it comes to numbers, I don't like making comments when I don't have all the facts around it. But this is the position of the federal government as far as execution of a budget. So for those who are not familiar with this territory, the federal government comes up with a budget. The current one is about 54.99 trillion. And then the budget has the components like the expenditure. Expenditure covers whether it's recurrent or capital expenditure. And of course, when these performances are being checked, say how much was released to carry out what was earmarked in each of the budget items that was listed. So for the fact that we are going to spend, so it's called a budget because it's called a spending limit. So it's a law. The law says that the federal government must spend 54.99 trillion, nothing exceeding that, even by 1 naira. If you want to exceed by 1 naira, you will have to go to the National Assembly to present a supplementary budget. But at the end of the day, during oversight and checking of budget performance, the people in charge will have to look at the books and say, we earmarked this amount for this, that. How much was released and how have we been able to perform? And sometimes releases are a challenge, procurement issues are a challenge. I remember the DG of BPP, which we're hoping to have one day on the program, talked about some of this procurement fraud and all of that. So perhaps if the government has claimed that it has done 80% of its budget performance, I think it's commendable. It's now for us to do the research and find out whether what they are saying is true or false. But the president has actually said, for instance, for 2025, at least the non-oil sector revenue component of the revenue sources for non-oil and oil sector, non-oil has been able to bring in its earmarks, I think 15 trillion out of the 36 trillion. So we're going to look at all of those books. As I said, I don't like making comment on all the things. I don't have facts available, but commendable. But how is that impacting you in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of your personal security or your area security, road infrastructure, and all of that? And then one of the biggest challenges of this government is the fact that they want us to tighten our belts and just understand with the system because of the peculiarity of removing subsidies so that we can have a better future. But we don't see that signal coming from them. So they have the moral hazard of doing the direct opposite, buying jet, building house with the kind of money they spend, renovating International Conference Center with an outrageous amount. We're still looking for the details. But that is where we are. You don't stop talking. Put the pressure. That's why you're here, to make sure that the government listens to you. But we'll take a quick break from the papers. When we come back after this break, we'll be talking to a member of the ADC, who is a member of the strategic team that formed the ADC. He'll be with us in just a moment as we talk about it. Now that the Senator David Mark-led ADC is now recognized by INEC, we'll be talking about that in just a moment. Stay with us.